How's it going, everyone? This is Austin with Windy Ridge Trapper, bringing you guys the Fur Harvesters auction report today. If you're here looking for a lot of good news, you're not really in the right place. A lot of the predictions that we made towards the beginning of the season kind of came true. Not as bad as what I thought it would, but they kind of did. By the way, before we get started, if you're not currently a subscriber, it would really help us out a lot if you'd hit that subscribe button, like the video. And if you want to support us in other ways, you can go to our website at windyridgetrapper.online and get some of your lure off of us. We're going to hop right into it. We're going to start off with Beaver just because that's kind of been the hot item for the past year and a half, 2 years. Until this June auction, Beaver had actually been doing really well. Honestly, just about as well as I had seen it in a really, really long time. So we'll do a recap on March off of the Beaver real quick. So in March, Beaver did really, really well, selling at 99% of the total yield sold, with the average on the Eastern Beavers bringing about $32, and then the average on the Western Beavers bringing about $28. There were 45,000, just a little bit over 45,000 Beaver offered in March with a 99% clearance. That's very, very good. And then as of today, with the end of the Fur Harvesters, the 2024 Fur Harvesters auction results in June, only 71% sold, which is still not awful, but it's not great. We also saw the averages drop considerably. So the Beavers, the Eastern Beavers, went from an average of $32 in March to an average of $25 yesterday, which is a 22% decrease in the average yield that we saw from the Eastern Beavers. And Western Beavers actually did worse, with an average of $19 a piece, coming all the way down from $28 for March, which is a 33% drop in yield. So that's pretty bad, but that's what happens. I mean, everyone saw that the Beaver market was strong, and everyone decided to go after them. Whenever over the past decade, not as many people did. So whenever you kind of go and you flood the market with something that is in demand, that demand is met, and it's met a little bit too heavy, and that's just how it goes. So I don't know if it's going to stabilize. I don't know if it's going to stay at that price. It's going to depend a lot on how heavy that they're sought after and how heavy that they're trapped this upcoming season. Hopefully not as many people go after them. If not as many people go after them, then I can see that price staying about the same. And $25 averages and $19 averages for East and West isn't even terrible. Just a couple years ago, especially around the West Virginia area where we're at on the central East Coast, we were seeing averages of $16, $17. So $25 average still isn't bad. We'll just have to keep an eye on that. Another thing that we predicted that we pretty well got right was otters. So Beaver trappers primarily are the ones who catch otters, and whenever there weren't a ton of beaver being caught, there weren't a ton of otters being harvested. So in March, otters actually did okay. I mean, they sold 97% of them, which is really good, but the average was relatively low. They were at $33 a piece. And it was worse in June. They only sold 70% of them, and the average dropped from 33 to 29. And the otter portion of the auction is actually a portion that I didn't watch a lot of, so I don't have as much insight to give you on that. But we can look at the numbers. It went down, and otters are going to follow the beavers. If people continue to harvest heavy numbers of beavers, and the otter is going to continue to go down, and if people slack up on it, then it'll go up. Muskrat is the same as it's been for a couple years now. Ever since COVID and the whole crisis with all the ranch mink, they're just not selling them. In March and in June, which, just a couple of days ago, they're not selling them. I mean, they're selling some of them. I shouldn't say it like that, but they're not selling even half of them. Really, only the low-end muskrats are being sold. And I don't have the exact percentage wrote down here, but if I am remembering correctly, I think in March it was like 20 or 30%, and it was something close to that here in June. But I'm just going to go over red and gray fox real quick. There's not a lot to talk about. They've been bad for a couple years, and they're still bad. Red Fox, we'll go over March real quick. They sold 63% of them, which is not very good. With the Easterns bringing 16, 64 on average, Northerns bringing 17, 19 on average, Westerns bringing 9, 32 on average, and Central bringing 731 on average. That's pretty awful, to be honest. I don't know how you guys feel about it. I mean, if you've got them coming into your property and causing property damage or tearing up your livestock, I understand taking them out. But unless we catch one and it's a cherry and it's a big one, or at least it's a number one, we don't even keep them. We just let them go. We don't see any reason to harvest them for that low money. And then here in June, they sold 50% of them, which is not good. And they sold, the prices dropped relatively significantly too, with the average on the East going from $16 in March to $12 now. Northerns going from $17 to $10, Western going from $9 to $4, and then Central's going from $7 to $3.72. I mean, that's awful. I mean, I won't kill a fox for that low money. It's not worth it. They're a beautiful animal. There's not a bunch of them, especially around here. I can't say that there's not a bunch of them everywhere, but especially around here where we live, there's not a ton of them. And I mean, I don't think that there's anything wrong with you harvesting them, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to harvest a red fox for that low of money. Not, like I said, not unless it's a really, really big one, and it's got really good color. Gray fox. That's a whole other thing. That's one thing that we really can't figure out around here. I don't know how it is where all you guys are living at, but here in West Virginia, you can't hardly find gray fox. I mean, whenever I was a kid, you used to be able to harvest a decent amount of them. And whenever my dad was a kid, he always talks about how you go out and catch 10 to 15 a night and not even have to try that hard. But there's not that many gray fox left. So I don't really understand why the prices are so low, unless there are just larger numbers of them somewhere else in the country. But there's just not demand for them, I guess. So we'll look at the gray fox in March. They sold 90% of them for $12.87 on average. And now you look at June, they sold 15% of the total gray fox that they had, which is awful. I mean, they basically didn't sell any of them, and they sold them for an average of $15.84, and I'm willing to guess that was some of the best gray fox that was there. So that's just awful. There's not even a lot to talk about. I mean, that is an awful price. Whenever we catch gray fox here, we don't harvest them. I mean, I can't say that about everyone that lives in West Virginia, but the guys that I run with, we catch them, take some pictures of them, make sure that they're healthy, and we let them go. But now we're going to get into something that might be a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. There is one good thing that we noticed coming out of this auction, and that's actually coon prices. And it's not as good as what we hoped it would be, but it definitely could be a lot worse. So over the past 8 to 10 years, coons have not been worth anything. I mean, they've not been worth harvesting. I mean, we harvest them just because we like to, but they're just not, they haven't been worth any money, especially here in West Virginia and on the East Coast. Now, you get into the Western heavies and all that good stuff. That's a different ball game, but I'm talking relatively speaking about where we live. But we'll start off in March. And in March, coon did really well compared to the past couple years, having a 95% clearance, selling almost all of them, with Easterns averaging $7.90, Western heavies averaging $12 and some cents, and then Canadians averaging $8, which, like I said, isn't great, but we all felt like it was a step in the right direction. And then we got to the sale on Saturday, and they only sold 50% of them. And one thing that I will tell you about these averages are kind of deceiving, because we had some coons up there and we didn't sell any of them. I will be the first one to tell you that we did not ship our best coons up there. They were actually some of our mid to lower grade coons, but we just needed to get rid of them. But we didn't sell any of them. Really, out of the 50% that sold, they were just the good ones. I mean, they didn't sell anything that wasn't either at least a number one or a heavy. They might have sold a couple of number twos, but not very many of them. So if you didn't have really good coons up there, you weren't selling them. But so the prices out of the 50% that sold, the Canadians dropped from $8 to about $6.50. Western heavies dropped from about $12 and some change all the way down to about $9.86. And then our Eastern coons dropped from the average of $7.90 in March down to about $5 this past Saturday. So I will say this: I'm glad to see that they're at least selling the better ones for $5, because for the past couple years we've not even really been able to get that. It is kind of discouraging to see the price drop a couple of dollars from March to June, but you get the most money in March. That's when the most fur is there. That's when the most buyers are there. So there is almost always going to be a little bit of a price drop from March going into June. It has a lot to do with supply and other things, but at least it's higher than what it was. That's one thing that we all got out of it. Moving on to coyote, this is a whole lot of the same. Over the past couple of years, coyotes haven't been good. They've not been good since Canada Goose quit using the coyotes for the trim on their jackets, and there still hasn't really been anyone there to come in and fill that void. So just a real quick March recap on the coyotes. They sold 60% of them in March, with the Easterns averaging about $12 and some change, and the Westerns averaging about $25 and some change, which is not good. I mean, there were not a bunch of trash coyotes up there. Those were some decent coyotes. I mean, there were some lower end ones that sold, but not that many. But you look at it this June, and it was worse. I mean, we listened to a decent amount of the coyote portion. They only sold the good hides, and they sold 38% of the entire selection. So, well, Eastern coyotes were about the same. They were $12.41, so they averaged 30 cents more. And then the Western coyotes were actually a little bit worse. They went from $25 into $22. And once again, just stating, they only sold 38% of them. So yeah, coyotes still not looking good. The only time that you should really be mindful with coyotes, I mean, if you catch one and it's a big dog and it has really good hair, you can tell it has really good hair, or if it's an off-collar dog, then that would be a good time to save that and to try to seek out its value. And by the way, before I forget, we are fur dealers, and we don't buy fur in quantities that most people do, but we actually look for quality hides. So even if you don't want to sell it to us, if you call us, we'd be happy to try to give you an idea on what that's worth. You can find our phone number on just over there on our website at www.windyridgetrapper.online. I'm not going to put out my phone number in the middle of a YouTube video, because that's just, if you're going to call me and mess with me, you're at least going to work for it, because I can't tell you how many times I get calls where people are just being silly. Now, this is something I really wanted to talk about, and something that a lot of people need to try to think about for this upcoming season. So at our local auction, bobcats did relatively well at the beginning of March. And we all kind of had the feeling that bobcats were going to continue to do well. But this June auction kind of threw that off a little bit. So we'll kind of go back to March a little bit, the fur harvesters auction in March. And they did well. They had a clearance of 93%, which is really good. Canadian went for an average of 180. Northern went for an average of 169. Western went for an average of 501. And then our most of our bobcats grade out as Central or Eastern, and their Centrals went for about $73 on average, which isn't bad. I mean, that's a pretty good first selection average, but it was not good yesterday. Actually, it was today. Now that I think about it, that they just finished up with it a couple hours ago. So we had some good cats up there. I mean, we only had one or two cats that didn't get great grades. We had two selects, and so we had over half of our cats didn't sell today. Over half of them, they did not sell. I don't know if they'll sell private treaty. I hope that they will, but I don't know. But they didn't go in the auction. No one had any interest in them. But the Canadian bobcats, they had 100% clearance. selling at an average of about $195. The northern selection had a 90% clearance with an average of about $109. The western selection had a clearance of about 90% with $451, which if you harvest western cats, you know that's not a very good average. And then our central had an average of $71, but they only sold 21% of them. That is awful. That is not good. I don't know what happened with that, with the clearance with the difference in clearance, but they didn't hardly sell any of our bobcats today. And the ones of ours that they did sell, I really felt were worth a lot more money than what they paid for them. So yeah, I was pretty disappointed with the bobcats today. I don't know what that's going to look like in the future. I don't know why bobcats did so poorly today. So if you're a cat trapper, I would just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, especially if you're on the east coast of the U.S. It may not be a bad idea to hold your cats for a year or two, just to get a good feel on the market. And of course, before trapping season starts, we'll put out another video trying to give you our idea on what the market's going to look like. But yeah, so cats at this very moment just are not looking very good. Skunk in March did really well. If you're a land trapper and you pick up skunks, I know a lot of people don't like to mess with them, but you talk about something that's really not that hard to put up, and you get good return on your investment. Skunks are where it's at. March, skunk had 100% clearance at an average of $23 a piece. That's good money. I mean, anyone who's put up fur for a long time, I mean, you should be able to put up a skunk. And I say that I should watch what I say, because not everyone has an electric skinning machine. But with our machines that we have, I mean, you could put up a skunk in 10 or 15 minutes. And even if you're just using a skinning gambrel, I mean, a half an hour, I mean, you should be able to get that skunk done. And you know, that $25 per hour, that's $50 an hour. That's good money. So I would advise to keep on trying to harvest those skunks. And now there was a good reduction in June. They didn't sell 100%, but they sold 83%, which is pretty good. And they had an average of $13.25 a piece. I don't see skunks staying that low. I think if you have good, high-quality, prime, wide-striped skunks, that you aren't going to have any issue selling them. Every auction that I've been to, every person that I've talked to, they're selling for good money, so I would continue to harvest them. There's just not a lot of them harvested, so I don't see that being an issue. And then the good old possum. We'll end on the good old possum. Well, here's the good deal about a possum. If you harvest a decent possum, it's always worth the quarter. You know what I mean? There's no surprise there. They didn't sell very many of them. Possum is one of those deals. Well, we shipped some up there. We never should. I don't ever encourage anyone to ship possum to fur harvesters, because you're going to sit on them for 10 years. But if you've got a good local fur buyer, they're going to buy them. They're going to give you a nickel or a dime or a quarter. And if it's a really good one, you might be able to get a buck or two. But yeah, that's a possum. It's a possum. I mean, if you want to put it up, more power to you, but it's not something that we necessarily do a whole lot of. A possum is a good animal that if you've got kids that trap with you, you just kind of let them tinker with it, so that whenever they mess it up, you don't got to get mad over it. But one thing that I will let you know, within a couple of days of this video coming out, we are going to be releasing our preliminary fur prices for the 2024-2025 trapping season, if you kind of want to get an idea on what our market is going to look like. Oh, and a disclaimer: if you're a fur buyer, do not use my prices and get mad if you lose money, because if you're a fur buyer, then you just know that there's a decent chance you're going to lose money. You don't make a lot of money buying fur. It's just as a gamble that you take. You've got just as good luck going and playing the lottery. And if you're a trapper, and you go and look at our prices, just take caution, knowing that that is what the market looks like for us now. That does not mean that that's what it's going to look like here in about 6 months. But it'll be close. It'll be close. I mean, it'll take something kind of drastic for it to change that much. The one good thing about the fur market over the past few years, it's been so bad that it's kind of constant, like it can't get much worse. But if you would like to see our fur prices, you can check them out. Just make sure, because we do always have prices on there. The prices we currently have on there are from the last season, so they won't be accurate. So just make sure that whenever you look at the fur prices, they say 2024 to 2025 season. But you can find our prices on our Facebook page, or you can find them on our website at www.windyridgetrapper.online. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment. Just go ahead and put your opinion on the fur market, what you think it's going to do in your area. I always like to hear from people, especially from people that don't live around here, people from way down south or out on the West Coast, because you guys have totally different things that we don't have to deal with. So it's always interesting to talk to you guys and hear from you guys. And that pretty much wraps it up. Hope you have a great day. Bye.